We look at the Moyon platform. These statues were first made in 1100 and stopped in the 1600. It was made out of volcanic tuff figures on a basalt base. The Moyon platform was made by the Rapa Nui, who are a group of people located on the Easter Islands.
When compared to the Nike Semnothos in the Greek Hellenistic period in 190 BCE, we can clearly see a difference in what the Greeks were doing and the Rapa Nui.
This is completely true, especially when looking at the styles of the Nike Semnothos compared to the Mois. As the Mois are not proportional, have no clothing, and the way they look, we can infer that the sculptor knew very little about anatomy. Overall, they are abstract that emphasize the face and torso. Something else to know, though, is that of the 887 Mois, they all have a different facial expression and would have hold nothing because their hands are insanely tiny. Also, these Mois have no stance because it's just their torsos besides their face, and they have no legs, so they have to lie on a platform. Their pose is in frontal, which is very basic. While the Nike Semnothos is proportional due to the Greek obsession of perfection, she's made idealistic, not realistic. She's wearing a wet drapery to add a sense of motion. Even though she's missing her head and both her arms, we can infer the Greeks knew a lot about anatomy. She stands in contrapposto, which was a Greek stance discovered in the classical period. Her pose is like a dramatic twist, and she's missing both her arms and head, but we can tell that she was most likely holding a trumpet or a victory crown, and her facial expression was likely to be joyful since she was to announce a naval victory.
Besides the style of these being different, they're similar in so much just color. Since the Mois have color for absence on select statues, and Nike Semnothos is believed to be blue, found microscopic traces of blue paint. But there still are some notable differences to like the size of these, since the Nike Semnothos is only 9 feet high, while these Mois range is in all kinds of sizes, with 13 feet being the average.
Something else they have in common is lighting. As these Mois are originally in natural light, and the Nike Semnothos was also originally outside, as it was in a harbor outside in Semnothos. Texture, though, is a major difference, since the Mois use rougher materials like basalt, while the Nike Semnothos is much more smoother. And the lines are completely different, since the Nike Semnothos lines were much more intricate in order to add motion, while the Mois have carvings and their lines aren't so intricate, because the material they use was much more rougher. These carvings in the back included two brethren facing each other that have human hands and feet carvings. They also have a ceremonial dance pad known as owl. The right ear also has four shapes that look like an inverted V, that likely represent the female vulva. These carvings were most likely added on a later date. They both were also placed on platforms, but something that is completely different they have is shapes, as the Nike Semnothos looks like a real human being, while the Mois look like a 3D circle on a platform rather than a human.
The subject matter of the Mois on the platform is that there's 887 Moi making statues on Easter Island. The story behind these is that it represents personalities to fight after death, and the significance is that it honored their ancestors. While the subject matter of Nike Semnothos is Nike herself, the story behind it was that she would inform the Navy of a victory. The significance of her was it had a huge impact of traditions.
For the Mois, there wasn't a specific patron, but it was most likely commissioned by someone in the upper class, since these were made by a group of carvers and it was used for the village's rituals. The site was public because everyone in the village would be there to witness the ritual, and its purpose was to honor their ancestors and it represented their spirits. These would have been very important to the Rapa Nui, as the four major themes they care about in their culture mostly is ancestors, rituals, religion, and God. And the Mois would have served all four of these themes. Unlike the Mois, though, the Nike Semnothos had an unknown patron and was most likely to commemorate a Greek victory, hence why we see Nike, the goddess of victory. It was in a public site, so the people of Greece can be proud of being Greek.
Something else to mention is the scale has Mois range in all kinds of sizes, from 8 to 70 feet and 30 feet on average. While the Nike Semnothos is just 9 feet tall, the sizes being different, the back of each Moi there's a low relief and sizing added by a Bearman cult for ritual and about strength and endurance. Stylistically, these are also one of the most unique statues ever. The material is also a major difference, since the Nike Semnothos is made of marble because of the tradition and has to do with perfection, while the Rapa Nui used basalt and volcanic tuff. That's because they didn't have access to rich materials like gold to commemorate their ancestors.
You might be wondering where these Mois were placed. They were placed in a city called Orongo, where they would face the ocean, because the people believed they would protect them from invaders. This, in the end, didn't work out, as the British ended up conquering the islands, leading to the Rapa Nui's religion being erased as the people ended up converting to Christianity, bringing an end to the construction of the Mois. Another thing is the balance of these Mois. As a whole, 887 are symmetrical, while the Nike Semnothos is not. But because they are symmetrical, they are not dynamic, while the Nike Semnothos shows a lot of motion as seen by a twisted pose. The reason why is because this is the Hellenistic period, and the Greeks wanted to show emotions and motions. Lastly, we want to mention how popular and influential these are in today's society, since these Mois are seen in movies like Night at the Museum and have influenced others. Here's a quick clip of him in the movie Night at the Museum.
Hey! Dum-Dum.
Yes?
You give me gum-gum.
I give you gum-gum?
You knew Dum-Dum. You give me gum-gum.
Gee, okay. You know what? I have no gum-gum, sorry. And my name isn't Dum-Dum. My name's Larry.
No, your name Dum-Dum. Oh, you in trouble, Dum-Dum. You better run from Attila the Hun-Hun. See you later, Dum-Dum.
The Moist influence goes beyond movies, has even its own emojis, showing its influence on today's society. And this only happened because the Europeans, specifically the British, wanted to take it back to Europe. But this ended up having a negative effect on the Moist itself, as the rabbi knew had originally put some paint and redstone inlaid in the sculpture, specifically the eyes. But when at sea, they ended up being washed away.